47 harvest water from air with this genius $12 setup. There is a piece of cold metal sitting on my back step, and water is sliding down the side of it. Not much. One slow bead at a time. It drops into a tin cup my wife stopped using for coffee a long time ago. The grass around the step is wet, and the air smells like it does before a thunderstorm, except there is no storm coming. By the time the sun crests the tree line, that cup will hold close to a pint. I did not pour it. No hose ran to it. No bottle was tipped over it. The whole setup cost me less than a tank of gas, and the man who first showed me a version of it, back when I was small enough to sit on his boot, never once called it anything fancy. There is a reason you have not seen this on the evening news. It is not because it does not work. Before I go any further, pull up a chair. If you are the kind of person who would rather know how a thing works than be sold a finished version of it, you already belong here. Stick around. Leave a word in the comments if any of this stirs something you half remember. I read them in the evenings after the chores. That is the only ask I have got. Your company and your honest 2 cents. Everything else on this porch is free. The cup on my step is a small thing. Plain. A little dented on one side from the winter my son dropped it off the porch rail. But every morning, without fail, it fills itself. Not from rain. Not from a spigot. From the same air you and I have been breathing our whole lives without thinking twice about what is inside it. I am not going to sell you anything. I am not running a store. I am going to show you what is sitting on my back step and why a working man with $12 in his pocket can put one together by Saturday afternoon, and what it has quietly meant for this household. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Water out of the air sounds like one of those things a fellow on television promises right before he asks for your credit card. I felt the same way the first time I heard it spoken out loud. I almost laughed. But then I remembered my grandfather and the milk can he used to leave out behind the smokehouse in late August, and the ring of dark wet dirt around it every morning before the heat came up. He never explained it. He just wiped the side of it with his hand and went on about his day. He knew. He did not need a word for it. The reason I am telling you about that cup before I tell you about the parts is because the parts will not mean much until you understand what they are doing. The whole machine, and I use that word loosely because it has no motor, no battery, no moving piece, is built on something so simple that grown men have made careers out of hiding it behind long words. I will give you the long word once, and then we will set it down. Condensation. That is it. The same thing that happens on the outside of a cold glass of tea in July. Nothing more. But here is where it starts to bite. If something this plain has been working on the back of cold glasses and milk cans for as long as men have been drinking from them, then somebody somewhere decided you should not be doing it for yourself. Somebody decided the water that falls free out of the same sky your grandfather drank from should be bottled, trucked, taxed, and handed back to you for $2 a jug. Your water bill went up twice this past year. Mine did too. The gallon jugs are stacked in the garage like cordwood, and not one of us asked for any of that. I am not here to rant. I have done my share of ranting, and it never filled a single cup. What I will say, plain and steady, is this. The bottled water aisle at the grocery is the most profitable real estate in that whole store. The companies that own it did not get rich by accident. They got rich because most of us forgot something our grandfathers knew without knowing they knew it. And the survival outfits that show up in your mailbox every fall, the ones selling machines that pull water from the air for well over $1,000, they did not invent the trick. They put a fan on it and a price tag on it and a logo on it. The trick itself is older than any of them. Older than the catalog, older than the patent office, older than the word utility. Men were drinking dew off broadleaves before there was a country to charge them for it. Stone cisterns in the Mediterranean caught night condensation 2,000 years ago. Tradition holds those farmers grew olives in country drier than West Texas, and they did it without a single well. I am not saying that to romance you. I am saying it because the knowledge is not new. It only feels new because somebody worked hard to make sure it slipped your father's mind before he had a chance to pass it on. So here is what I am going to do. I am going to walk you through what is on my back step, piece by plain piece. I am going to tell you what each one cost me down at the hardware store and what you can swap in if your barn is anything like most barns. I am going to walk you through the build-in steps a man can do with 1 cup of coffee in him and not 2. And I am going to tell you the honest truth about how much water you will get, on what kind of mornings, and what this little setup will not do for you, because I will not lie to you about that part. But before I show you the parts, I want to tell you where I first saw this work. Not in a book, not on a screen. In a field behind a barn in late summer, before I was tall enough to see over the fence rail. The man who showed me was not trying to teach me anything. He was just thirsty, and he knew where the water was, and he reached for it the way you reach for a doorknob in your own house. That is the story I want to set in front of you next, because once you have seen it the way I saw it, the rest of this will land different. His name was Earl, and he was my mother's father, and he farmed a piece of clay ground in the eastern part of the state that nobody else wanted. He had a galvanized milk can he kept behind the smokehouse, set up on 3 flat stones so the bottom would not rust into the dirt. Every evening in August, he would carry it out empty and set it in the long shadow of the building, where the cool came on early. Every morning before breakfast, he would walk out, run his palm down the side of it, and drink from his hand. I watched him do it more times than I can count. I never once thought to ask him what he was doing. The dirt around the base of that can was always a darker color than the dirt 3 feet away, a ring of damp, plain as a coffee stain on a tablecloth. I thought when I was small that the can was sweating because it was tired. That is a child's idea, and it is not far off the truth. The can was cold from the night air. The morning air was warm and heavy with the river 2 pastures over. Where the warm air touched the cold metal, the water had nowhere else to go. It came out, it ran down, it collected in the dirt, and on the very best mornings, when Earl set a shallow pan under the lip, it collected there instead. That is the whole secret. Warm air carries water. When warm air meets a cold surface, the water has to come out somewhere. Say it slow: warm air, cold surface, water comes out. There is no trick beyond that. There is no machine that does anything fancier than that. The $2,000 generators in the survival catalogs do exactly this, with a fan blowing across a chilled plate, and a price tag built to make a man feel he could not possibly do it himself. He can. Earl did. Earl's father did before him. And the cup on my back step is doing it right now. So here's where I get honest about who profits when you forget this. The bottled water business is one of the largest and fastest growing aisles in any grocery store in America, and most of what fills those bottles started as somebody else's tap water before it ever met a label. The kind of company that profits when you depend on a utility, a vending machine, or a delivery truck for the most basic substance on earth, that kind of company has spent a great deal of money making sure the simplest answers feel ridiculous when you say them out loud. They did not lie to you exactly. They just stopped reminding you. And then there are the preparedness outfits, the ones with the glossy catalogs and the camouflage fonts, selling atmospheric water machines for the price of a used pickup. I have got nothing against a man wanting a finished product. If you have the money and you want the convenience, buy what suits you. But understand what you are buying. You are buying a fan, a coil, a compressor, and a logo. The physics inside the box is the same physics happening on the side of a cold glass at any kitchen table in this country. The markup is the part that came from a marketing office, not from a laboratory. Now I owe you the hedge, because I will not be the man who oversold a good thing and lost your trust over it. This setup will not replace a well. It will not water a herd of cattle. It will not fill a stock tank or run a washing machine or carry a family of 4 through a real drought. What it will do, in my experience, is hand you a clean cup or 2 of water every morning for the price of 1 bad lunch on land you already own, without permission from anybody. And in a hard month, the kind of month a lot of folks have been having lately, that cup is the difference between dignity and desperation. If anything I have said so far has stirred a memory, I want to hear it. Maybe you remember dew running off a tin roof and pooling at the corner of the porch. Maybe your mother set a pitcher in the window well on hot nights and you never thought to ask why. Maybe your father kept a piece of copper pipe in the spring house for reasons he never explained. Tell me about it down in the comments. The older I get, the more I believe these scraps of knowledge are sitting in 10,000 kitchens, waiting for somebody to say them out loud. I read every one of them on the porch after supper. The machine on my back step has 4 parts and only 4, not a dozen, not a hidden one, 4. A cold mass to hold the chill of the night into the morning, a collection surface for the water to bead and run on, a catch to hold what runs down, and a shade to keep the sun from undoing your work by 10 o'clock. That is the whole thing. Anything beyond those 4 is somebody dressing it up to sell it to you. Now let me show you exactly what $12 buys at any hardware store in America, and why the man behind the counter has no idea what you are really building. Walk into any hardware store on a Saturday morning, and you can carry the whole list out in one hand. A 2-foot length of copper pipe, 3/4 inch, runs around $6, give or take, depending on the week and the county. A small bag of rock salt, the kind folks throw on icy steps in February, is $1 and change. A clean stainless mixing bowl from the kitchen aisle, or a food-grade plastic funnel, if the bowl feels too dear, runs you 2 or 3. A short length of food-grade tubing is another $1. And a quart canning jar with a lid. Most of you have one in the cellar already, but if you do not, it is under $2. That is your machine. If your barn is anything like mine, you have already got most of it. An old piece of copper from a plumbing job. A jar your wife retired from the canning shelf because the rim got nicked. A funnel from the oil pan in the garage, washed clean. You can build this for under $5 if you scrounge, $12 if you do not. Either number is less than the bottled water you will haul home from the grocery this week. I want you to feel that in your chest for a second. The whole rig costs less than what you are already spending to solve the same problem the long way around. Now the build. 5 steps. I want you to hear each one as its own beat, because a man who hurries this will think it does not work. Step 1, chill the mass. Take your rock salt, mix it with a tray of ice, and pack it inside the pipe or set it against the pipe in a bucket. If you have no ice, freeze 2 water bottles overnight and lay the pipe against them. Cold is cold. The salt drops the temperature lower than ice alone. Step 2, set the surface. Lean the pipe at a slight angle, one end lower than the other, over your bowl or funnel. Step 3, channel the drip. The water will bead on the cold pipe within minutes. It will run downhill. The lower end of the pipe needs to sit directly over the mouth of your collection. Step 4, catch. Let it run into the bowl, then through the funnel and the tubing into the quart jar below. Step 5, shade. Set the whole thing in the cool shadow of the porch, the smokehouse, the north side of the barn. Sun is your enemy here. Sun warms the air around the pipe and slows your yield to a trickle. Cold metal, warm air, deep shade. That is the recipe. Here is the piece most folks miss, and it is the part that will make or break your morning. The angle of the pipe matters more than the temperature. Most people set it flat, and they get a handful of drops. A 6-degree tilt, about the angle of a dinner plate resting against a coffee mug, will roughly double what you collect, in my experience. The water needs somewhere to run, and gravity is the cheapest helper you will ever hire. Spend 3 extra minutes propping that one end up on a flat rock or a folded shop rag. 3 minutes. That is the whole difference between a wet bowl and a full jar. If you are the kind of person who would rather know how a thing works than be sold the finished version of it, you already belong on this channel. Stay with me. Subscribing just tells the platform to bring you the next one when I set it on the porch. That is the whole transaction. No bells, no whistles, no club to join. Just a quiet nod from one neighbor to another that says, I am still here, keep 'em coming. I sketched this whole rig on a single piece of paper, pipe, bowl, jar, angle, the whole thing, and it is sitting in the description below if you want it. No email, no nonsense. Now the honest part about yield, because I will not lie to you here. A humid morning in Georgia or East Texas, with the dew point sitting high and the night cool, will give you a pint to a quart in a few hours. A dry afternoon in Wyoming might give you a tablespoon and a hard lesson. Many homesteaders find the best harvest comes in the 2 hours before sunrise, when the air has cooled, but the ground has not given up its warmth yet. Do not run it at noon and call it broken. Set it out before bed. Check it before breakfast. And remember, any water you collect should be filtered or boiled before you drink it. Simple practice. Old practice. I poured the first cup into a coffee mug at the kitchen table the morning it worked right. It was cold, flatter than spring water, with a faint taste of the pipe. That copper tang an old plumber would recognize anywhere. Cleaner than anything I have ever poured out of a plastic jug. My wife took a sip without asking where it came from. She has stopped asking. The jar sits on the counter most mornings now, beside the coffee pot and the bread board, and she pours from it the way her mother poured from a pitcher off the back porch. Quiet, steady, like it has always been there. That cup is not really about water. It is about a whole shelf of things a working man used to know how to do that have been quietly priced and regulated and marketed away from him over the last 50 years. The setup on my back step is one small piece of that shelf put back where it belongs. A cup you did not pay for, a cup nobody can shut off. A cup that came down out of the same sky your grandfather drank from, on the same piece of ground he would have recognized. Pick up the parts this weekend, set it out Friday night, check it Saturday at dawn. If it does not work the first morning, tilt it. If it does not work the second morning, move it out of the wind, deeper into the shade. By the third morning, you will have a system that runs while you sleep, and you will never look at a bottled water aisle the same way again. One last thing, and I mean this plain. Do not let this be your only water plan. Pair it with what you have stored in the cellar. Pair it with a good filter. Pair it with a neighbor who knows where the spring runs on his back 40. Self-reliance is a web, not a single thread. One thread snaps, a web holds. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want a real answer if you have got one. Tell me down in the comments the one skill your father or your grandfather had that you wish you had learned before he was gone. Just one. I will read every one of them. I am collecting them now the way some men collect old tools because I think there is a video, maybe 100 videos, hiding inside those answers. Next time on this porch, I am going to show you what happens when you take a 5-gallon bucket, a handful of charcoal from last night's fire, and a clean cotton sock, and why the water that comes out the bottom of that bucket is cleaner than what most towns are pumping through their pipes. Right now, bring your coffee. I will see you out here.